आजकल इंटरनेट पर कंटेंट भरा पड़ा है फॉर फायर अर्ली रिटायरमेंट रिटायर एट द एज ऑफ 30 35 40.
I think mostly losers retire. A fire business is a epidemic that is happening in the society. मैं बड़ा against उसके. So all this influencers, they should be fired.
Welcome to Fired Couple, a channel run by two losers. Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. There's a lot of strong opinions, views available about if and when to retire. Honestly, I think there are no losers and there are no winners. Why? Because there is no one-size-fits-all approach. There are different approaches and you have to choose what works best for you and in your circumstances. So what I'm going to do is in this video, I will list out 5 broad approaches or options towards retirement, give you a view of their benefits, the risks of each, and also tell you what we have chosen as a hybrid of actually 2 options out of the 5 that I'm going to talk about, and why we've chosen this hybrid approach. But before I do that, let me first define retirement, because even the word retirement means different things to different people. Our definition is more similar to the dictionary definition of retirement, and that is that you cease your full-time employment or your active working life. This means that you have no longer an active main source of income, you don't have a full-time employment anymore, but that doesn't mean that you stop working. Because even if you're gardening at home, it's a different form of work, but it is work. If you're teaching your kids, it's a different form of work. Or if you're, for example, doing charity and volunteering for some non-government organization, it's also work. So there are different works. It's just that you are no longer having an active employment and you no longer have an active income. Now, what are those different retirement options? So the first one is the obvious one, which is the traditional retirement. That is that you retire at a traditional or official retirement age. Generally, it could be 60, 63, 65, 67, depending on the country that you are in. Now, the benefit of this traditional retirement is that means that your social security or your pensions kick in. Most likely, you've also built some level of corpus during your lifetime. So both of them will kind of ensure that you will not run out of money. There could be even employer benefits that continue even during your retirement years, including for a discounted healthcare that is more than what the state provided healthcare in certain countries. And the third benefit is that you have a lot more access to a social life, because majority of the people retire with this traditional retirement. So when you get into retirement, that means it's easier for you to gel into a similar set of like-minded people. And lastly, the benefit is that there are lots of sources, information available around this traditional retirement about how do you manage pensions, how do you manage healthcare, etc., etc. One of the obvious risks of traditional retirement is that you have to be careful about your health, because you are not going to be in your prime years to enjoy that retirement. So if you've not taken good care of your health, you may be entering into what we keep calling is the slow go years, that you may not be able to enjoy all the things that you dreamed of. So taking care of health becomes very important. And secondly is that you still need to be financially prudent. Why? Because as someone pointed in one of the videos as a comment, is that most of the time we are forced into retirement. That is that you either have some healthcare issues, some family personal issues, and most commonly that you may get laid off from your work and you get some package and as an exit into retirement. So if you are not financially prudent during those years, just waiting that you will think that your social security will take care of everything, you may be in for a surprise. So taking care of your health and taking care of your finances still is important even in traditional retirement. The second option, which is a much more extreme option, is that you either never retire or you retire in your late 70s or 80s. I think interestingly, a lot of politicians and celebrities do that. So you'll see a lot of, including Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Narendra Modi, etc., that they are in their 70s or 80s when they are still, doing such very critical roles. Now, the advantage of this approach of never retiring or retiring really late in your life, the first obvious advantage is that you don't need to worry about money because you'll have an active income till your last working day. The second advantage is that you will most likely leave behind a good amount of inheritance or legacy for your family, friends, society. Because if you never retire, you're working till your last day, so you're accumulating wealth, and even your pension, etc., will go to someone else, at least in your family. But the risks are obvious. One risk is that you'll be left with very little time for any life outside work. The other risk is that, like in the traditional retirement, that if, like it happened recently with Joe Biden, that he was forced to not be standing for another term, that you are put into this retirement stage, and then it may become difficult for you to socially gel with people, because the folks who've retired traditionally, by then they would have had a decade worth of forming those social clubs and relationships, etc., which may become difficult for you to jump into and gel in at such a later age. And lastly, it's much more of a societal risk, is that if no one retires, that means that it closes the room for people to grow in their careers. So imagine at your work, if your manager, your manager's manager, your entire line of command decides to never retire. Guess what's going to happen to your career? Your career is just coming to a standstill or a stall, because these guys are not, or these guys or girls, they are not going anywhere. So that means that it kind of stops the innovation or growth for other people into their careers and their journey to financial independence. The third option is the other extreme option. That is that you retire very early, that you retire straight out of college, or your early, even till your early 30s or late 20s. So you have very limited work experience. Now, generally, I think this is the category for people who either have what I would say the trust fund kids, that who have a big inheritance that they have got from their family, probably someone who'd never retired. The second is that folks who probably won a lottery, that they've really got lots of money. The third is that probably someone who's really encashed into Bitcoin and bought those cryptocurrencies at $1 a piece, and now it's $100,000. And lastly, probably it will be those startup kids who've made those startups and who've sold those startups and cashed out of that. Now, out of all these buckets, specifically what I've seen for the startup folks is that when they cash out, they are itching for more. So they are probably itching not for more money, but more of those kind of adrenaline rush of starting up another business. So they actually move on from one startup to another startup, or mentoring, or private equity, or angel investing, etc. So that is a different form of retirement, but that's possible. So the benefit of this approach is as obvious, that you have a lot of time at your hand. So you have the best freedom to experience anything that you want to do in your life, and you're at the peak of what I would say your go-go years, or prime years of your life, when your body, mind, health is all raring to go and can experience all the things that you would have ever imagined and dreamed of. But the biggest risk on this one is financial uncertainty, because you have a very short runway when it comes to building wealth, or at least through your active income. You're living off your investments, and when you're living off your investments, as I spoke in one of my earlier videos, that typically, by rule of thumb, you have to plan for at least one big black swan event that happens every 15 years. So that means that you would be going through many black swan events during your lifetime, be it wars, be it market crashes, etc., which could have a big impact on your financial portfolio that you have. The second risk that you carry when you retire very early is you become a bit socially isolated. Why? Because the people in your generation, or your age group, sorry, are most likely in their active employment that time. So during the daytime, you'll have less people to interact with. And the people who are retired, they are probably in a very different age group, so that it becomes difficult to find those common points to be able to gel with them. And the last risk, or last important risk, I would say, is that if you do end up with a financial uncertainty in future and you have a big impact on your portfolio, to get back to an employment in future becomes very difficult, because you don't have not only not experience but the comfort to be getting into a 9 to 5 job, or I would say a cookie cutter standard corporate job at probably in your 40s later or 50s later. So you have to be careful when you choose this particular approach about the financials, about the social aspect, as well as your overall professional skills. The third one is, I would say, more aligned towards this FIRE philosophy, which is, retiring early, but not retiring so early. So it's, I would say, almost the Goldilocks part of the, or the soft part of the FIRE part, which is that you retire in your 40s or maybe maximum early 50s. Now, the benefit of doing that is that you have a very good runway of your professional life. So you have overall a good work-life balance, that you've worked for a couple of decades or you've had a good runway for that, and now you have a couple of decades ahead, or at least more than 2-3 decades, where you can enjoy all the fruits of labor of those retirement years. The second benefit is that you've also got a certain amount of portfolio that you built, not just through your investments, but through your active income itself, to be able to have to avoid the risk of running out of money. The thing that you have to be, the third benefit I would say is that you are still in your go-go years. So you're still in a prime form of your body, that you can do like Seema and I, hiking, games, etc. Explore all the things that you could physically want to do, or even challenge yourself to do. That you have to keep in mind when you do decide to retire in your mid 40s or late 50s is, point number one is, just keep in mind that when you retire in your late 40s or mid 40s to late mid 50s, is you are in your peak of your career. This is the time when you're cashing out of all the investments on your skills that you've made, all the hard work that you've done. So it becomes very difficult to make that decision to break away from all that earnings that you are getting at that stage of your career. And for us, this was the biggest or the toughest decision that we had to do. It took a lot of courage to walk away from the peak of career, walk away from the money that we could have still earned. And as I've said, that we did fall for a few years of that one more year syndrome, that we did continue, but then we did pull the plug. So it becomes difficult to make that choice at that age. The second thing that you have to keep in mind as a consideration is that that is also the time of life when you may have some of the big investments coming up. So you may have to be looking for your children's education. You may have some family emergencies. We've gone through this in the last few years, and we see that this becomes a big impact, or at least a financial impact. So if you do plan to go for this path or pursue this path, make sure that you're building that emergency fund, make sure that you're building that education fund, that marriage fund, all that stuff towards that path, because otherwise you will have that shackles of not being able to retire at this age. The next one is, I would say, what is called the barista FIRE, where you are partially retired or you're doing part-time work. So you've still got your one foot in the door towards an employment in some form. The benefit in this approach is that you still continue with an active income. So your investments are funding part of your life, and your active income is in funding part of the other life. The other benefit is that you can define your own work-life balance, that you can enjoy for half a week and just pursuing your hobbies, etc. And for the other half a week, you're doing that work, whatever it is. The risks and the consideration is that the first one is that most of the time, this part-time work ends up turning into full-time. And what I mean by that is that, look, you may be being paid part-time, but you may be mentally thinking about work. You may be preparing for those work slides or whatever kind of work you're doing for the travel, etc., if need be. So without you realizing it, you may be working a lot more than those part-time that you think that you're working for. So you have to make sure that you balance that very well. The second risk is that because you're trying to be having one foot in both the doors, you may not get the best of both the worlds, maybe get the worst of both the worlds. where you may not be able to enjoy your good times because the stress of that part-time job, of depending on the type of job you're doing, could infect the time that you have for yourself. So you have to be very prudent that if you choose this barista fire approach or the partial retirement approach, that you're choosing something that makes sure that you are not adding any mental stress, and there is a box that you can lock yourself for the number of hours that you're going to dedicate to that. Out of all these approaches, we've kind of mixed the hybrid of the last two approaches, that we retired in our late 40s, and we are doing certain part-time activities. Why I'm calling it as a hybrid approach is because for those part-time activities, we are not using any of that as an active income. So, for example, I do once a quarter some level of sales trainings, negotiation trainings, because I love doing that. I do it out of just fun, just meeting my travel cost and hotel cost, etc. And every month I do mentor and coach people either on pro bono, or I would say a very nominal price that it kind of helps me cover my costs. And we do this channel where every week we release a video because we really love these interactions and really is fun for us. And interestingly, this channel is more of an expense line rather than an income line, because it costs us money to just edit and do all the video stuff, etc. But we are trying to make sure that we don't let this YouTube channel, this mentoring, the sales trainings, etc., engulf us. That we all, for example, there are few weeks where we do 4 or 5 videos in a row. We record it because we have time, and then we don't record for 3-4 weeks because we have that flexibility. Out of all these options, you can take your pick what works best for you in your circumstances. So don't get influenced by anyone saying that this option is for losers while this option is for winners, and this option is the right approach and this option is the wrong approach. There is nothing like that. Take your pick. Just be aware of the considerations and the risks on each one of them and prepare accordingly. If you do that, I think you're sorted. You'll have a great time ahead.